This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode 40. So if you're building a business around your CNC, then you are going to want a reliable machine. That either comes at the expense of you building it yourself and learning all of that, or buying from a very reputable company that's been around for a while and that will be around. This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by themakersguide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Griggs. It's been a while since I had a chance to record an episode of the show. There's been a lot going on in the month of October to prevent me from getting the show out. First off, we had a little bad news in the family as my sister Marion passed away unexpectedly, and dealing with all the funeral arrangements and everything that went along with that was quite an experience and a bit of work that I had not expected or anticipated doing, and it was difficult work. And now that we've managed to get past that, we're doing fine. But along the same time frame this all occurred, I hurt my back and was unable to sit in the chair long enough to record the episodes. So rather than rearranging my entire studio so that I could do it from a reclining position, I decided to wait until my back felt better, and we're there now. So if you have a back, take good care of it. And since we all have backs, that applies to all of us. Now, today's subject comes from a conversation that was taking place recently inside of the private Facebook group, the hashtag CNC Router Tips group. And one of the members was wondering whether, as a new CNC person, he should get a company-made machine or a custom-made CNC machine. And by that he means a machine that is built from plans or by someone rather than by a company. For instance, when I built my machine, I was using plans that were available from joescnc.com, and I had very good results with that. There are many other companies which also offer plans. In fact, themakersguide.com has a set of plans for the X and Z axis for as a retrofit for the Joe CNC machine. It's called the Warp Drive. But there is also CNC router parts. They offer a kit. There are many other companies which also offer either kits or plans to build your own. MechMate is one example for a much larger, sturdier machine. And you can find those at mechmate.com. MECHMATE.com. Okay, so those are just a few, and I'm not recommending one or the other above the other. They're all good plans. But, it begs the question. If you're a newcomer and you want to get into CNC and own a CNC router table, is it in your best interest to go out and build the machine yourself? Or is it in your best interest to just buy something that is turnkey, that, the drop off the crate at your house? You uncrate it, plug it in, load some software, and off you go. Now, there's two schools of thought on that, and I have my own personal opinions, but I thought just this once that I might give you just a feel of what is going on, because we have a wide variety of members in our group, and each of them has their own opinion, which is based off of their previous experiences. And so, in this case, we've got, as of today, the 24th of October, we have 4,117 members in the group, and about 50 or 60 people are involved in this discussion so far from that. But I'll read you the question that the member of this group put in, and it says, another newbie question: company-made versus custom-made CNC. And he said, I've been eyeing, and then he mentions the particular brand of router that he wants. I've been eyeing this CNC hard, but my buddy who's made a couple of CNCs from scratch, mostly piecing together and some fabrication, swears he can make me a more stout and powerful machine for just $1,500 less. I know a lot of you here make your own, so I'm curious to hear both sides. And I know some of the specs he's told me, but the stuff is still up in the air. So we got a lot of responses to that, and one of the first ones was from one of our members, and he said that do-it-yourself is indeed a lot cheaper. He says, I have no experience with it myself. With the amounts of posts I see here, people tweaking and trying to get stuff to work right, I'm more than happy to pay the premium to be up and running without issues immediately. Not that it wouldn't be great to learn the tech stuff, but I don't have the time for it. And, that brings up a valid point. When you buy a company-made CNC machine, you don't have to figure out how to build it. You don't have to figure out how to adjust it. You don't have to figure out, which software and electronics to choose. That's already been done for you. The upside of that is that generally your machine is up and running faster because it's just plug in the cords and, make all the installations that you have to, load your software. But that's also where your learning curve begins, because you have to learn how to operate the software, what part of the machine does what particular operation, how to ensure that it's in the right place at the right time, and how to basically run that machine. So in either case, you're going to have that learning curve of learning how to operate this machine effectively. Okay, so the major difference between the company-bought machine and the do-it-yourself machine is you get to that point faster because you're not building the machine, which can take anywhere from a few days to a few years, depending on your skill level and your devotion. So, that's one opinion. Another member said, kind of expounded on it, he says, the main issue with the do-it-yourself homemade kit is support. If you're using the machine in a professional context, you want it to just work or have the ability to phone in someone to fix their stuff. Having a mission-critical machine depending entirely on a single individual is a huge risk that I wouldn't take with my business. And by that, he's referring to having the person who built the machine be the one that you depend on, assuming that person is not you. And there's some validity to that statement, because if you are running a business, time is money, okay? And the more time you spend with the machine not cutting, the more time and the more money you're losing. But having to wait for a service technician to arrive and fix something, or customer support over a phone to help you diagnose a problem can also be problematic because you're tied to their schedule. Most of the times the machines break on non-office hours for support. And, anyone who's operated a machine can tell you that. It's always on a Saturday afternoon at 6 o'clock that something happens, or Saturday evening at 6 o'clock after everything is closed. So then you're waiting until Monday morning before you can begin the conversation with the technical support people about your machine and what may be wrong. And you better be very descriptive and know exactly the proper terms and nomenclature for your machine so that you can communicate your problem effectively. If you had built the machine yourself, you would know how each part goes together, each part functions, what they do, and that sort of thing. So you'd have an idea of how to fix or replace what was wrong. And so that is one major advantage that I see when it comes to knowing how to get your machine back up and running in a pinch. And that is important and valuable skill to have. And, one of the other members mentioned that the best part about building your own CNC is that you know every working part, and if something fails, you know what it is, and you can fix it quickly. Now, that person had also built a Joe CNC machine, so that's what he was referring to. Okay, the two choices that we've discussed so far are building your own machine or buying one that was made by a company. And there's a third option, which is buying a secondhand machine. This is typically a commercially made machine that you pick up used. And one of our members said that he purchased a secondhand machine a while back, but it didn't take him long to realize that the USB Mach 3 controller was terribly unreliable, so he eventually tossed out that controller and fitted a parallel port Mach 3 controller that worked fine. I also noticed that long after he'd purchased the used machine that the X-axis ball screws would jam now and then, and he stripped the entire thing down and found that the ball screws were badly worn. And so he has to live with that issue now because he can't afford or find ball screws to replace it. Then he further realized a couple of days ago that the entire gantry was skewed about 6 millimeters. And it seemed that it had been assembled that way right from the start. So he stripped the gantry down and put in shims to fix that problem. And so, you have to be aware that you can face some issues purchasing a secondhand machine. He can deal with all of these issues because he's very handy. He says the biggest problem is not whether the machine is new, because new machines are often problematic when you first get them. But the issue is whether you have the ability to deal with the kinds of things that you're going to find, or whether there's very good support that still exists for the machine that you purchased. And both of those are big considerations when you buy a secondhand machine. So you have to do your due diligence. You have to check the machine's accuracy before you buy it, and run it through its paces and get a really good inspection of the machine. And if you don't have the skills to recognize problems with the machine, then you should take someone with you who can kind of guide you through the process and give you their informed opinion of the machine before you buy it. Now, there's a big difference between whether you're purchasing this machine for a business or whether you're purchasing it for hobby use. If you're going to be using your machine for a business, then it's got to be reliable, it has to be repairable, and you have to have great support. Because if it's not reliable, you'll never produce accurate parts. Okay? If it is not repairable, then any time that the machine breaks, you're out of business. Okay? And if there is not good support existing on your machine, you won't be able to diagnose any issues that you have. So if you're building a business around your CNC, then you are going to want a reliable machine. And that either comes at the expense of you building it yourself and learning all of that, or buying from a very reputable company that's been around for a while and that will be around. So you've got to think about this. And one of the things that you consider when you have bought a machine as a hobbyist is you generally have no budget or low budget. So you're trying to make do with things, and you can make decisions that long-term are not wise for your business. So you have to be aware of the choices and make an informed decision. So as you see, there's both pros and cons for choosing a commercial machine over building it yourself. Now, for my personal opinion, you will never know a machine as well as you will know a machine that you built yourself. Knowing where each nut and bolt of a machine goes, knowing how every part functions together is invaluable. Having the knowledge to assemble, build, or operate a machine that you created is something that I just can't stress highly enough and recommend highly enough. However, if you're trying to get your business up and running in a short time frame, the likelihood is that purchasing a company-made machine is probably the best option for you if you're doing this as a business. The support system that they will have in place, the ability to plug and play the unit, just plug it in and go, are both major positive factors to consider when you're doing this, as far as I'm concerned. So you have to analyze what your final goal is before you make this decision. There is no right answer. Both methods work very well. It's just what's your comfort zone, what is your time frame, and what is your budget. Company-made machines are much more expensive than custom-built machines. But all of the machines generally run the same software, have the same hardware. So it's just a matter of, is your time worth more to you than your money? Now, one last consideration for a company-built machine, and we should be done with this discussion. Many company-built machines use proprietary software and proprietary hardware. Now, this can be a problem if you want to do upgrades later on as you get more experience and decide that you want to add functionality to your machine, or that you just want to replace something that has worn out. You may not like the proprietary CNC software that the company has. You may not like having a USB pendant that you are required to use a thumb drive to load in all your files. Or you may not like the conversational programming that comes with your machine, and you may want to use something else. If your machine is using proprietary software and hardware combination, it's even worse, because you cannot, in some cases, get anything else to work with your machine. So there's some things that you need to consider ahead of time, and you have that conversation with the machine provider to find out what are your upgrade paths, what are your abilities to change things. Can they make the changes for you? Can you make the changes yourself? So it's just something to consider.
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
If you found this episode helpful, I would hope that you would take the time to leave a rating and review on iTunes. There is a link at the bottom of the show notes page for this episode, which you can find at CNCRoutertips.com/40, the number 4 and the number 0. Okay, and that will tell you how to leave a rating and review for this episode and for this podcast in iTunes. I really urge you to take the time to do that because that helps me to get more attention and allow more people to find this information, which I think is valuable to you as you're getting started in your CNC. That is really the only way that people know that this show is out there, by the number of ratings and reviews that it receives. And I do read every review, and I do appreciate every review. So if you could take the time to leave a rating and review, I would be eternally grateful. Well, that's it for this episode of the CNC Router Tips podcast. Thank you, and have a great day. I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, CNCRoutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software, all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's CNCRoutertips.com/resources. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone, and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the CNC Router Tips podcast. If you'd like to join our free mailing list, you can go to CNCRoutertips.com, and there's a link right there on the top of the page which tells you how to do that. Thank you so much, and have a great day.